truly and deeply sorry, and we commit to today's apology and next week's apology, and quite frankly, all apologies. We will continue to apologize. There are many more apologies to come.
Right.
And indeed, I'm going to apologize again.
I'm really sorry.
We were wrong. We apologize. I am sorry. We are sorry. Sorry about not having done that. Whenever anyone makes an apology, as the person apologizing,
Shut the fuck up. Do some damage, boys.
Just don't tell.
Oh, hello. Welcome to System Fail, the show where we agree with flat earthers about exactly one thing.
But Christopher Columbus?
Christopher Columbus, the original ISIS.
Christopher, my boy, the Earth is as flat as this orange.
But this orange is round.
So is the Earth, son. People don't think so. But we who know the sea are sure the Earth is round.
Here's the thing, globe hugger. Your plane can't go upside down.
Yeah, fuck Columbus.
I'm your host, DDoS, and as millions of North Americans observe a religious ritual from feudal Europe by dressing up in silly costumes and gorging themselves on high fructose corn syrup.
Woo! That's really stretchy!
Members of multiple indigenous nations are engaged in an anti-colonial struggle with many front lines. On October 11th, a coalition of radical indigenous organizers called for a day of rage against colonialism. The appeal for autonomous, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, and anti-fascist actions was a clear rebuke to what organizers called the uninspired assimilationist politics of Indigenous Peoples Day, a tame, progressive alternative to the official state holiday of Columbus Day.
Indigenous people are done with colonizers!
In several cities across the so-called United States, people answered the call by toppling colonial statues and monuments. In so-called Arizona, members of the Odom anti-border collective blocked a highway immigration checkpoint to protest the construction of a border wall through Tohono O'odham territory.
You got freedom!
The protest was soon set upon by Customs and Border Protection agents, who fired tear gas and rubber bullets and arrested 12 people. Recent weeks have also seen a sharp increase in colonial tensions in the territories ruled by the Canadian state.
I thought I was going to make it through this, but I'm not.
On September 28th, a 37-year-old Atikamekw woman named Joyce Echekwun died in a hospital in Joliet, so-called Quebec. After complaining of mistreatment by racist staff, she live-streamed the taunts of her nurses as she lay dying. This footage soon went viral, provoking widespread outrage, and a series of vigils, rallies and demonstrations carried out under the banner, Justice for Joyce. Anti-Indigenous racism has also been on display in Mi'kma'ki, specifically in the area known as Nova Scotia.
Fuck's sakes, boys.
Where a dispute over fishing rights has boiled over into ugly scenes of mob violence.
An estimated 200 commercial fishers preventing employees of a lobster holding pound from leaving and removing crates of lobster caught by Indigenous harvesters.
Canada's colonial police force, the RCMP, has stood by and watched as non-Indigenous fishers have barricaded Mi'kmaq boats, attacked lobster storage facilities, sabotaged traps, torched vehicles, and otherwise sought to terrorize members of the Tsebeganagat'i First Nation out of exercising their inherent fishing rights.
This lobster pound in southern Nova Scotia was being used by Mi'kmaq fishers to store their catch. The fire so intense that it burned the building completely to the ground.
Look at that, shooting flares at us!
Good try, motherfucker!
Back in 2013, the Mi'kmaq Warrior Society intervened in Rexton, so-called New Brunswick, during a conflict between members of the Elsipogtog First Nation and Texas-based fracking company SWN. The warriors ended up clashing with an RCMP tactical squad before the community eventually pushed them out of the area, torching a number of cruisers in the process. Recently, calls have been growing for the warriors to regroup.
Come on! Really?
To back up their fellow Mi'kmaq, who are facing the brunt of colonial violence. In the meantime, support is growing, with a number of solidarity actions taking place around the country.
We stand with them, we stand proud. Keep on fighting, we're here. We got your back.
On the other side of the continent, the țռօռыʍօʊfv have delivered a cease and desist order to the TMX Pipeline Corporation, which is now owned by the federal government.
Should have known better, but I didn't.
The order demanded an immediate halt to plans to drill under the țռօռыʍօʊfv, or Thompson River, in so-called British Columbia. If completed, the Trans Mountain Pipeline would massively ramp up the transport of bitumen from Alberta, allowing for an expansion of the tar sands, and threatening the survival of salmon that surrounding indigenous nations and much of the region's wildlife depend upon. On Thursday, October 15th, 5 people were arrested while blocking workers from drilling under the river.
This is unceded Secwepemc territory. Our land is not a sacrifice zone. We are going to stand and defend this water by any means.
Things have also been heating back up on the Wet'suwet'en as workers with the Coastal Gas Link pipeline are preparing to drill under the Wet'suwet'en, otherwise known as the Morris River. The Coastal Gas Link pipeline is a proposed 670-kilometer fracked gas pipeline, owned by TC Energy and private equity firm KKR. Its construction through unceded Wet'suwet'en territories has faced sustained and determined resistance for over a decade. As construction continues to push on towards the Wet'suwet'en, Coastal Gas Link workers are increasingly enlisting the RCMP as private security, harassing Wet'suwet'en and their allies, and attempting to block them from upholding Wet'suwet'en law.
Don't threaten me with an injunction if you don't know that you don't have permission of the authority of this territory.
This past February, Wet'suwet'en supporters launched a coordinated series of decentralized rail, port and highway blockades under the banner #ShutdownCanada. These blockades lasted for weeks, causing widespread logistical and economic disruption. Calls for a resumption of these solidarity actions have recently begun to circulate.
We all knew it was coming, but we hoped it wasn't.
And in so-called Ontario, members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy from the 6 nations of the Grand River occupied a proposed development site on their territories back in July. The encampment, dubbed 1492 Land Back Lane, is located near the town of Caledonia, which lies within an area known as the Haldimand Tract. This land, which spans 6 miles on either side of the length of the Grand River, was granted to the Haudenosaunee by treaty in 1784, as compensation for territories that their confederacy had lost in the American Revolution. The official reservation of the 6 nations of the Grand River currently accounts for only 5% of the historical Haldimand Tract. Ownership of much of the remaining lands is disputed.
European settlers on the Grand River, helping to create a close relationship between the people of Haldimand and their 6 nations neighbors for many years.
Back in 2006, community members from 6 nations occupied a proposed development site known as the Douglas Creek Estates, leading to what became known as the Caledonia Crisis. A tense standoff that was only resolved when the Ontario government stepped in to buy off the developers. This time around, the proposed Mackenzie Meadows development site, home to 1492 Land Back Lane, is located directly across the street from the former Douglas Creek Estate site. Patterns of repression and resistance have taken a similar direction as well.
Okay, we have some people chasing a police officer out of the way.
Get the fuck out of here! Break it out!
Run, motherfucker, run! Run, motherfucker, run!
A militarized raid on August 5th by the Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP, immediately provoked widespread community mobilization and led to burning highway blockades.
It's on, boys!
On Thursday, October 22nd, an Ontario Superior Court approved a permanent injunction against the encampment. Since then, resistance has only intensified. The Ontario government has sought to isolate the encampment, heavily criminalizing supporters, arresting dozens of people for breach of injunction for simply visiting the site, and playing on colonial fears of Indigenous resistance.
Well, you just can't go in and just take over people's future homes. It's wrong. And then when the police come, they get an outhouse, toss it over from a bridge onto a police car.
Fair play.
To find out what they're so scared of, I recently caught up with Skylar Williams, a Haudenosaunee resident of Six Nations, and the official spokesperson of 1492 Land Back Lane. Hey Skylar, how's it going?
Holding space and, preparing for what lengthy legal battles await us.
I see. Well, at least the weather there looks pretty nice. How did the 1492 Land Back Lane occupation start?
Myself and some friends and family kind of knew about this development that was about to start. And then at the very beginning of us wanting to go in there to occupy, to reclaim our lands, it was right at the start of all the COVID stuff. Barricades went up around the reserve, and there was lots of concern about whether or not us as a community could withstand the outbreak that was coming, and so people were really worried about that. After a couple of months of letting that kind of settle and get to where it is now, we had seen that they hadn't stopped any of the development that was going on there. They cleared the land of every blade of grass, every tree, every shrub, every hill. It was just, and so now it's just some barren clay there. So we moved in there on July 19th. It was a Sunday evening. We were very deliberate about going there Sunday evening because, we wanted to remain as a peaceful occupation of our land. And so going in there kind of during the day, during the week, meant that we were going to have lots of, workers there, and there was going to be confrontation and that kind of thing. And so we went in on a Sunday to try and mitigate any of that risk of having, a big standoff with the developers and the workers of those developers. We went and we were there for about an hour. We set a fire and erected a couple of flags. After about an hour, the police pulled in, and they asked how long we were going to be there. And we said that day that our people have been here for the last 10,000 years, and our people are going to be here for the next 10,000. And so we kind of all laughed, and a police officer said, so I take it you're going to be here for a while then, and they left. And so 2 weeks of just holding space began. Community support started to happen. We started getting hot meals delivered every day, and people started coming out to stay with us to help hold that space. And so we started, everybody kind of chipping in and helping out, and more tents started getting erected.
What has the response been from the Canadian government?
On August 5th, there was injunction that was granted to the developer without notice, it's called, and the police moved in the morning. They said they had to come and read the injunction, and when they did, they blocked off both accesses to the camp to prevent anybody from coming in. They came, they read the injunction, and then this massive line of vans, it was like 15 passenger vans, just started rolling down the highway toward us, and the police barricade line moved back, and all of the cops rolled in. 100 OPP tactical unit folks got out of those cars with big guns, and they came out and said that they're going to start making arrests. And so a group of us there, we backed up onto the site and asked anybody that wasn't planning on staying through any of that. They were told that they have the option to leave if they want. And myself and a few others said, no, we're not going anywhere. And we stayed. In the process of those arrests that were being made, 9 of them that day. There was one young man that was tasered in the neck and head. One young woman happened to be standing there videotaping, got in the way of the line of cops that was coming. And she was picked up and slammed into the mud. We all got rubber bullets fired at us. It was a hectic day. I was released about 5 hours later. And when I got out, this woman came up to me and asked me if I knew what was going on the land and on the roads down there. And I said no. And she showed me some video of stuff that was going online right now. And at that moment, there was highway blockades and rail blockades and roads were blocked. And I got back down to Caledonia, just off the reserve. And folks asked myself and some of the other people that were, at Landback, at 1492 Landback Lane, and they asked us what we wanted to do. And I think we all almost at the same time as we said we wanted Landback, and we wanted to go back to our camp. And so, just like we did on day one, there was about a dozen cars, and 30 people jumped in those cars and drove right back in the front door.
How does this dispute fit within the broader context of Haudenosaunee land claims?
Those blockades that went up were was that reaction to, an ongoing criminalization of land defense. Canada and Ontario settling land claims through court action, through arrests, through putting these heavy, weighty bail conditions and release conditions on people that they can't defend the land, to drag people from their families, from their homes, from arrests that are being made in front of kids. It doesn't matter for us. Our obligation to the land is far greater than anything that they could do to us. And so to take that kind of inherent right away from my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, this is their land. Who would I be to deny them that by me not making the stand that I'm making today?
Is there anything else that you want to add?
When we stand together as communities, whether that's Indigenous folks across the country or with our allies in all of the big cities across the country, we're able to make our voices heard. There's no limit to the accomplishments.
Thanks, Skylar. We've now reached the end of this episode of System Fail. If you'd like to support any of the Indigenous-led struggles we've discussed in this episode, check the show description for links on how to do so. To support Submedia, consider making a one-time donation or signing up to be a monthly sustainer at sub.media/donate. You can also support us by buying some of our merchandise at sub.media/gear. Be sure and follow us on your corporate data mining platform of choice. Just search for Submedia, or better yet, sign up to our mailing list and get every new episode delivered directly to your inbox. Godspeed, humans.
Ever since I was a little KID, I've been feeling like my DAD. Every time he's around the RCMP, man, I'm ready to fight, cause it's we, not me. Man, I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree when the goom swell abused their authority. Tell me, I'm a snow goon, man, I bring the D like Richard Sherman in the LOB boom. Wanna talk about the who's who, you ain't got a blues clue. We don't fit the same shoes, okay, old news. And land is all we got and we refuse to lose, so we finna go Jordan 2-2, talk about boo-foo, by us, fuck you. We standing rock in the lay low, middle fingers to the sky like the buzzer had a guide. We gon' start a picket line and we'll be saints if we die.